I have never felt smaller than I did sitting in that plastic chair, clutching my chest with one hand and gripping the armrest with the other. The fluorescent lights of the Detroit emergency room hummed with a sound that felt like a drill boring into my skull. My name is Raymond Carter. I am 79 years old. I served my country in the jungles of Vietnam, and I worked 40 years on the assembly line without missing a shift. I have always paid my own way. I have never asked for charity. But that night, as the snow whipped against the sliding glass doors, I would have traded every ounce of my dignity for a single cup of water. My throat felt like it was filled with broken glass. I had been sitting there for 6 hours. My daughter, Sarah, had dropped me off at the curb. "It's too cold for me to walk you in, Dad," she had said, her eyes fixed on her phone. "Go check in. I'll park the car and be right there." That was 6 hours ago. I watched the automatic doors opened and closed, letting in blasts of freezing air, but Sarah never walked through them. "Nurse?" I croaked. My voice was barely a whisper. The triage nurse behind the glass didn't look up. She was typing furiously, snapping gum in her mouth. I tried to stand, but my legs were shaking so bad I fell back down. The pain in my chest wasn't sharp anymore. It was a heavy, crushing weight, like an engine block sitting on my ribs. But the thirst was worse. "Please," I rasped, louder this time. "Water!" "Sit down, Mr. Carter," she said, without looking at me. "We'll get to you when a bed opens up." I needed to use the restroom. I had needed to go for an hour. I tried to hold it. I squeezed my eyes shut and thought about Martha, my late wife. I thought about how she used to iron my shirts on Sundays, how she'd hum Amazing Grace. I tried to focus on anything but the pressure in my bladder. I waved my hand at a passing orderly, but he looked right through me like I was a ghost, like I was old furniture that needed to be thrown out. Then it happened. My muscles gave out. The warmth spread down my leg, soaking my gray trousers, pooling in my shoes. The shame hit me harder than a bullet. I slumped forward, hiding my face in my hands, tears burning my eyes for the first time in 20 years. A woman across the aisle wrinkled her nose and pulled her child away from me. I was a wet, shivering old man, alone in a room full of strangers. And then my phone buzzed in my pocket with a text message. I stared at the phone screen through blurry eyes. My hands were trembling so violently, I almost dropped it into the puddle forming beneath my shoes. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing me into the floor. I could feel the eyes of the people in the waiting room. They weren't looking at me with pity. They were looking at me with disgust. I wanted to scream that I used to be strong. I wanted to tell them I used to carry steel beams. But I just sat there, smelling of urine and old age. I unlocked the phone. It was a text from Sarah. "Heading home. The wait is too long. Mark is hungry. Call us when you get discharged." I read it 3 times. She wasn't parking the car. She wasn't coming. She had left me. She had left her father, who had just had a heart episode, sitting in his own mess in a crowded ER waiting room because her husband, Mark, was hungry. I felt a crack in my heart that had nothing to do with arteries or valves. It was the sound of my life breaking. I remembered when Sarah was 5, she had a fever, and I sat by her bed for 2 days straight, changing cool washcloths on her forehead. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just watched her breathe, terrified the fever would take her. I would have died for her. I would have cut out my own heart if she needed it. And now I was an inconvenience. "Mr. Carter?" I looked up. A young doctor looked at me, then down at the floor, then back at my face. He didn't sneer. He looked sad. "Let's get you cleaned up," he said softly. He didn't shout for a janitor. He reached out and took my arm. His grip was firm, respectful. He helped me stand. My legs were numb. I shuffled alongside him, the wet fabric clinging to my skin, freezing cold. As we walked down the hallway, away from the judging eyes, I realized I had left my wallet in Sarah's car. I had given it to her to hold while I got out because my hands were shaking so much I was afraid I'd drop it in the snow. My ID, my insurance card, my credit card, everything was in that glove box. "Doctor," I whispered, panic rising in my throat. "My wallet. My daughter, she has it." The doctor guided me into a small room and closed the door, shutting out the noise. He looked at my chart, then at me. "Mr. Carter, we tried to call the contact number on your file for your daughter 5 minutes ago to get your insurance details." He hesitated. The look on his face terrified me more than the chest pain. "The number has been disconnected." Disconnected. The word hung in the sterile air of the exam room like a death sentence. "That's impossible," I said, my voice shaking. "She just texted me. Look." I fumbled with my phone, thrusting the screen toward him. The message was there. "Mark is hungry." The doctor gently pushed my hand down. "I believe you, Raymond, but when we call, it goes straight to a recording saying the line is no longer in service. Or perhaps the number has blocked the hospital switchboard." Blocked? She blocked the hospital? I sat on the edge of the gurney while a kind nurse named Elena helped me out of my soiled trousers. She didn't make a face. She brought me a warm hospital gown and a heated blanket. "It happens, sweetie," she whispered, patting my shoulder. "Bodies get old, don't you fret." But I was fretting. I wasn't worried about my pants anymore. I was worried about Barnaby. Barnaby is my golden retriever mix. He's 14 years old, blind in one eye, and has hips that give out on the stairs. He's the only living thing in that house that looks at me like I matter. When Sarah picked me up today, Barnaby was whining at the back door. I hadn't fed him his dinner yet. I usually mix his medicine with a can of the expensive wet food, the kind that costs $3 a can. I eat dry toast and peanut butter for lunch so I can buy it for him. He needs that medicine for his pain. If Sarah wasn't coming back, who was feeding Barnaby? "I need to make a call," I told Elena. "Please, I need to call my neighbor, Mrs. Gable. She has a spare key." Elena handed me the room phone. I dialed Mrs. Gable's number with stiff fingers. It rang and rang. Finally, she picked up. "Hello? Mrs. Gable? It's Ray Carter." "Oh, Ray. I saw Sarah leaving your place a few hours ago. She was loading boxes into that big truck of hers. I thought you were moving in with her finally." The room spun. My breath caught in my throat. "Boxes?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "What boxes?" "Big ones, Ray. And the TV and—" "Oh, Ray, she put the dog in the truck too. She said she was taking him to the shelter because you wouldn't be coming back home." The monitor next to me started beeping rapidly, high-pitched, frantic alarms. My heart, it was beating so fast I thought it would explode. "The shelter?" I gasped. "She took Barnaby to the pound? Ray? Ray, are you okay?" The darkness crept in from the edges of my vision. The last thing I saw was Elena running toward me, shouting for a crash cart. I woke up to the rhythmic whoosh click of a machine breathing for me, or maybe it was just monitoring me. I wasn't sure. The room was dark, lit only by the green glow of the displays. I was alive. Unfortunately. My chest felt bruised, tender to the touch. I tried to sit up, but the tubes and wires tethered me to the bed. I remembered Mrs. Gable's words. Boxes, the TV, the shelter. It wasn't just abandonment. It was a robbery. My own flesh and blood was stripping my life down to the studs while I lay dying in a hospital bed. I closed my eyes and saw Sarah's face. Not the woman she is now, cold, impatient, always asking where my pension check is, but the little girl she used to be. I remembered the day she scraped her knee and cried until I put a Band-Aid on it. I remembered buying her first car, a used Honda, with the overtime money I saved for 2 years. I remembered paying for her wedding, to Mark. even though I knew Mark was a snake and couldn't hold a job. I had given her everything, and she had thrown me away like trash. The door creaked open. It was a police officer. He took off his hat as he stepped inside. He looked young, maybe 30. He had a kind face, but his eyes were serious. "Mr. Carter?" he asked softly. I nodded. My throat was too dry to speak. "I'm Officer Miller. The hospital social worker called. They were concerned about possible elder abuse, financial exploitation." I turned my head away. The shame burned hotter than the fever. To admit that your child is stealing from you is the hardest thing a parent can do. It feels like you failed, like you raised a monster. "She took my dog," I whispered. That was the only thing I could say without breaking down. "She took Barnaby." Officer Miller pulled up a chair. He took out a notepad. "We're going to look into everything, Raymond, but I need you to be honest with me. Has she asked you to sign anything recently? Any papers you didn't read?" My blood ran cold. 2 weeks ago, Sarah had come over with coffee and donuts, a rare treat. She was smiling. She said she found a program that would lower my property taxes. She said I just needed to sign a few forms to authorize the city to assess the house value. I didn't have my reading glasses. I trusted her. She's my daughter. "I signed," I said, tears leaking from the corners of my eyes. "I signed some papers. She said it was for taxes." Officer Miller's jaw tightened. He didn't write anything down. He just looked at me with a profound, heartbreaking pity. "Mr. Carter," he said slowly, "we checked the county records this morning. Your house was listed as sold yesterday afternoon." The air left the room. Sold? The house on Elm Street. The house where I carried Martha over the threshold in 1974. The house where we measured Sarah's height on the kitchen door frame with a pencil. The house where I sat alone in the dark for 5 years after Martha died, talking to her picture on the mantel. "Sold?" I repeated. The word tasted like ash. "But I'm still alive. I live there." Officer Miller sighed, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "If those papers you signed granted her power of attorney, or if she transferred the deed, she could do it legally, on paper at least, until we prove fraud." Legal. That's what Mark always talked about. Loopholes. Mark hadn't worked a real job in 10 years, but he knew every scam in the book. "Who bought it?" I asked. "An investment company, cash for homes type deal. Quick closing. They probably gave her 50 cents on the dollar just to get the deed fast." They sold my memories for quick cash, probably to buy a new truck or go on a vacation. They sold Martha's garden. They sold the porch where I smoke my pipe. "And Barnaby?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Please, officer, the house. Let it go. I don't care about the bricks, but my dog, he's old. He's scared. If he's in the pound, they'll put him down. He has bad hips. Nobody adopts the old ones." Officer Miller stood up. He put his hat back on. "I'm going to the shelter myself, Mr. Carter, right now. I'll check, I promise." He left. I was alone again. I lay there, staring at the ceiling tiles. I started counting them. 1, 2, 3. I needed to get out of this bed. I needed to fight. But I was 79, tied to a monitor, with no money, no ID, and apparently no home. Then the door opened again. I expected a nurse. Instead, Mark walked in. He was wearing a new leather jacket. He smelled of stale cigarettes and cheap cologne. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. "Finally awake, old man?" he grunted. He didn't ask how I was. He walked over to the bedside table and picked up my watch, the gold retirement watch from the factory. He turned it over in his hand, assessing its weight. "Where is Sarah?" I demanded, trying to sound strong but sounding weak and frail. "Sarah's waiting in the car. She can't stand the smell of hospitals." Mark pocketed my watch. He actually put it in his pocket, right in front of me. "That's mine," I said. "Not anymore, Ray. Consider it a down payment on all the gas we used driving you around." He leaned in close, his face inches from mine. His eyes were cold, dead things. "Listen to me carefully, Ray. You're confused. You have dementia. That's what we told the doctors. That's what we told the social worker." "Dementia?" I spat the word out. "I'm sharper than you'll ever be, Mark." Mark laughed. It was a dry, ugly sound. "Are you? You signed the house over for a donut, Ray. You wet yourself in the lobby yesterday. You're confused. You're a danger to yourself." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. He smoothed it out on the blanket over my legs. "Sarah feels bad, you know. She really does. She wants you to be safe. We found a nice place for you. Sunset Meadows. It's a state facility. Shared rooms, heavy sedation. You'll sleep through the whole thing." He tapped the paper. "We need you to sign this admission form voluntarily. If you do, we'll make sure you get some of your clothes sent over. Maybe a picture of Martha." He was holding my wife's photo hostage. "And if I don't? Then we tell the doctors you attacked Sarah. We tell them you're violent. You'll go to the psych ward, Ray, bound to a bed. And we'll still sell the house. But this way? This way's easier." My hands were fists under the sheets. I wanted to punch him. I wanted to break his nose like I would have in 1968. But I couldn't. I was too weak. "Get out," I whispered. "Think about it, Pop. I'll be back in an hour." He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "Oh, and about the dog? Don't worry. I took care of it." "You took him to the shelter?" Mark smirked. "Shelter charges a surrender fee, Ray. I just opened the truck door on the highway. He ran into the woods. He's nature's problem now." The scream that tore out of my throat didn't sound human. It was a guttural roar of pure grief and rage. The monitor spiked. Mark just winked and walked out. I couldn't breathe. Barnaby, my gentle, half-blind Barnaby, wandering on the highway in the snow, scared, cold, looking for me. I ripped the IV out of my arm. Blood sprayed onto the white sheets. I didn't care. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. My gown fell open. I was dizzy. I grabbed the IV pole to steady myself. I had to get to the highway. I had to find him. I took one step, and my knees buckled. I hit the floor hard. The pain in my chest exploded again. "Mr. Carter!" It was Elena, the nurse. She rushed in, followed by Officer Miller. He was back. "I found him!" Officer Miller shouted, dropping to his knees beside me. I looked up, vision blurring. "Barnaby?" Officer Miller shook his head, his face grim. "No, Ray. I found the footage, the security camera at your bank." Elena helped me back into bed, rebandaging my bleeding arm. She was crying silently. I could feel her tears landing on my hand as she taped the gauze. "What footage?" I wheezed. Officer Miller stood up. He looked angry, not at me, but a righteous, burning anger. "I went to the bank to freeze your accounts, Ray, to stop them from taking any more money. The manager showed me the security tapes from yesterday morning. Sarah came in wearing a wig. She had an old man with her, someone who looked a little like you from the back." I stared at him. "An imposter? She withdrew $40,000, your life savings, and she cleared out the safety deposit box. My mother's ring, my Purple Heart medal, Martha's wedding band. She had a power of attorney document," Miller continued, "but the manager thought the signature looked shaky. He flagged it, but he couldn't stop it in time. But here's the thing, Ray. The document was notarized by a friend of Mark's." I lay back against the pillow. "They took it all. The house, the money, the rings." We can get the money back, Ray. It takes time, but we can track it. But I have worse news. Officer Miller hesitated. He looked at Elena. She nodded, encouraging him to speak. When I was at the house, I saw the neighbors. They said Mark came back an hour ago. He was ripping things out of the walls, copper pipes, wiring. They're gutting the place before the new owners take possession. They were destroying the shell of my life just for a few $100s in scrap metal. Officer, I said, my voice steady now. A cold resolve had settled over me. The grief for Barnaby had turned into something else, something hard and iron-like. Mark was just here. He has my watch in his pocket. Officer Miller's eyes widened. He's here? In the hospital? I said, he gave me an hour to sign myself in to a state home. He said if I didn't, he'd claim I was violent. Officer Miller unclipped the radio from his belt. Is he still in the building? I said, he said he'd be back in an hour. He's probably in the cafeteria or the waiting room. Miller smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a wolf's smile. Elena, keep Mr. Carter comfortable. I'm going to make a call to my partner. We're going to have a little welcoming party for Mark when he comes back to get that signature. Wait, I said. Officer, Barnaby, did you check the shelter? Miller's face fell. I called every shelter in a 50-mile radius, Ray. No one has seen a dog matching his description. My heart sank again. Mark hadn't lied about the highway. But, Miller added, I have a patrol car out looking near the highway exit Mark mentioned. We aren't giving up. I closed my eyes. Hang on, Barnaby, I prayed. Just hang on. 40 minutes later, the room was quiet. Too quiet. Officer Miller had left to set up the sting operation. Elena had to attend to another patient. I was alone with my thoughts, and they were dark. I looked at the window. It was pitch black outside. Snow was sticking to the glass. It was 5 degrees below zero. If Barnaby was out there, he was freezing to death. The door handle turned. I tensed, expecting Mark, but it was Sarah. She looked tired. Her makeup was smeared. She was wearing a heavy winter coat that I recognized. It was Martha's old coat, the one I kept in the cedar closet. Seeing her wear it felt like a slap in the face. "Dad," she said. Her voice wasn't aggressive like Mark's. It was whining, victim-like. "Why are you making this so hard?" She walked to the bed. "Mark is really mad, Dad. You shouldn't have upset him." "I stole your house, Sarah," I said. I didn't recognize my own voice. It sounded like gravel. "We didn't steal it. We're managing your assets. You're too old to live there alone. You fell last month, remember?" "I tripped over a rug. I didn't fall." "Same thing," she waved her hand dismissively. "Look, we need the money, Dad. Mark has this investment opportunity. It's going to pay off big. Then we'll buy a big house with a guest room for you. I promise." Lies. Layer upon layer of lies. "Where is Barnaby?" I asked. Sarah looked away. She couldn't meet my eyes. "He ran away. Mark tried to catch him. Mark told me he threw him out on the highway." Sarah flinched. She knew. She knew what kind of man she married, and she let him do it. That was her sin. Cowardice. "Sign the papers, Dad, please, before Mark comes back up. If you sign, I can protect you. If you don't, I can't stop him." She held out the pen. I looked at her hands. She was wearing Martha's diamond wedding ring. It was too big for her finger. It was twisted to the side. "That ring," I said softly. "Your mother never took it off, not even when she was dying. She wanted you to have it when you got married, but not like this, not stolen." Sarah looked down at the ring. Her lip quivered.
For a second, I saw my little girl again, the one who used to cry when she hurt a bug. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered, "but we're in debt, bad debt. Mark owes people, scary people." So that was it. They weren't just greedy, they were desperate. "Give me the pen," I said. She handed it to me, relief wash over her face. "Thank you, Dad. You're saving us." I took the pen, I took the paper, and I wrote in big, shaky letters across the signature line, "I do not consent." "Dad, no!" She lunged for the paper. At that moment, the door burst open.
"Step away from the patient," Officer Miller shouted, his service weapon drawn but pointed low. 2 other officers crowded into the small room behind him. Sarah screamed and jumped back, dropping her purse. The contents spilled out, including a stack of cash wrapped in bank bands. My cash! "What is this?" she shrieked. "He's my father. I'm taking care of him." "You're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, and grand larceny," Miller said, holstering his gun and pulling out handcuffs. "No! Mark! Mark!" she yelled. "Mark is already in custody," Miller said calmly as he cuffed her hands behind her back. "We picked him up in the lobby. He had Mr. Carter's watch and several ounces of copper piping in his jacket." Sarah began to sob, ugly, loud sobs. "He made me do it. I didn't want to. He said he'd leave me if I didn't help." I watched them take her away, my own daughter. As they dragged her out, she looked back at me. "Dad, help me! Tell them I'm a good person! Dad!" I turned my head to the wall. I couldn't watch. My heart was breaking all over again. Justice doesn't feel like victory. It feels like amputation. You lose a part of yourself to save the rest. The room cleared out. Officer Miller stayed behind. He looked exhausted. "We got him, Ray. We'll get the house sale annulled. It was fraudulent. You'll get your home back. We recovered the cash and the jewelry." I nodded slowly. "Thank you, officer. You're a good man. There's just one more thing." He stepped out into the hallway and whistled. A young female officer walked in. She was carrying a bundle wrapped in a thick police blanket. My heart stopped. She walked over to the bed and gently placed the bundle on my legs. The blanket moved. A wet black nose poked out, then a golden head, one cloudy eye, one brown eye. "Barnaby!" I choked out. He let out a low, joyful woof and licked my chin. He was shivering, his fur was matted with ice and mud, but he was alive. "Found him walking down the median on I-75, the female officer said, smiling. "He was heading back towards your exit. Smart dog." I buried my face in his wet fur and wept. For the first time in years, I really cried. I cried for Martha. I cried for Sarah. I cried for the cruelty of the world and the kindness of strangers. But the story wasn't over, because the next morning the doctor came in with a clipboard. He looked serious. "Mr. Carter, your tests came back." The doctor sat down. He didn't have his usual smile. "Raymond, when you came in with the chest pain, we found something else. The stress of this event likely triggered the angina, but the blood work showed abnormalities." He turned the clipboard around. I saw words I didn't understand, but I knew the tone. "You have advanced kidney failure, Raymond. It's been progressing for a long time, likely years of unmanaged high blood pressure." I stroked Barnaby's head. He was sleeping on the foot of my hospital bed. Officer Miller had convinced the hospital administration to make an exception. "How long?" I asked. "Without dialysis, maybe 6 months. With dialysis, a few years, but it's hard on the body." I looked out the window. The sun was shining on the snow. It was bright and clean. I had my house back. I had my dog. I had my dignity. My daughter was in jail, and I would likely never speak to her again. That was a wound that would never heal. But I was free.
"I want to go home," I said. "Raymond, you need treatment." "I want to go home with my dog," I repeated firmly. "I want to sit on my porch. I want to smoke my pipe. I want to sleep in my own bed." I didn't want to die hooked up to a machine in a sterile room. I wanted to die as I lived, on my own terms. 1 month later. I am sitting on my porch. It's a warmer day. The snow is melting. Barnaby is chewing on a raw bone, the expensive kind. I bought him a whole box. The house is quiet. The copper pipes have been replaced. The neighbors, Mrs. Gable and the others, they come by every day. They bring casseroles. They shovel my walk. I am not alone. I received a letter from Sarah yesterday. It was from the county jail. I haven't opened it. I put it in the fireplace and watched it burn. Maybe one day I'll forgive her, but forgiveness doesn't mean letting the snake back in the garden. I take a sip of coffee. My hands are steady. I am Raymond Carter. I am 79. I am tired, but I am still here.